You're listening to the Mountain Practice Journeys podcast, a comfy, cozy place for private practice introverts, highly sensitive therapists, and solopreneurs who help and heal. This is the place for practical, nature-based, magical support for your business and life. Hello there, and welcome back to the Mountain Practice Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Cindy. Here in episode 79, I'm going to continue my conversation with Hannah McCormick and Nicole Hiller of Showing Up Solo about how to make your marketing content go further. Now on to our conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mountain Practice Journeys podcast. I'm joined again today by Hannah and Nicole of Showing Up Solo. So we talked last week about, what to talk about in your marketing content and how to come up with content ideas. And this week, we're going to be talking about how to make your content go further by repurposing and expanding. So welcome back.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us back. We had so much fun last week.
Yeah. So why don't y'all tell us a little bit about, what you do and how you help?
Yeah. So Hannah and I started just about a year ago working together as a team. I actually used to be a contractor for Hannah, and we just really realized that not only do we love working with each other, but we were finding that the clients that we worked with were facing the same challenges over and over and over. And we wanted to really create a place for them to learn about marketing, online marketing, but also have a place where they can connect with one another and feel empowered. And also have a place to just not feel so alone, because as a business owner or a mompreneur, it feels kind of lonely working, at home on your business by yourself. So, yeah, that's how we kind of started Showing Up Solo.
Yeah, and a lot of it also was sparked off by, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. We were doing a lot of social media management, email marketing services for clients, and our marketing was deteriorating. I think I actually didn't post anything in October or November. I just went cold turkey on all of my content. And we were talking about how can we make this easier? How can we stay on top of our marketing and still keep delivering all this work for our clients? And part of the trigger for the Showing Up Solo podcast was actually that Instagram wants videos. So I had started trying to make an effort to go live once a week. And I was getting great content coming out of it, but it's stuck on Instagram. And so we're like, well, we should just record videos, and we should just record videos together because then we can both use it. And then, we're recording videos, we should repurpose that into podcast episodes. And suddenly we had decided to start a series, and it really grew from there. And what we did is we worked together to come up with a marketing plan that we can both use to bring in new clients, but that we can batch. And we do that. We get together. We live in different provinces. We get together every 6 months, and we record 6 months worth of episodes and a bunch of reels. And we just batch all of our content, plug it into a scheduler that we use that it's called Meet Edgar, and it just shuffles everything around for you, makes it really easy. And we can just post consistently without having to think about it very hard. And we wanted to share that with other people too, because it has made our life so much easier.
Yeah, I love that.
And also, we kept finding with our clients that they kept asking us, what do I create content around? And we kept saying to them, you don't need to create new content every day. You have great content. All you need to do is repurpose it and keep sharing it with your audience. The more people read the same topic, the more they're going to understand the level of your expertise and how you can service them. And So that's when we really started to focus our attention on supporting our clients in creating evergreen content. And so that essentially was like the beginning of us creating our guide, Full Circle Content, because we're like, wait a minute, we have these podcast episodes that we're filming. How do we use that to create, 20 pieces of content so that not only are we, able to service our clients, we're able to work smarter, not harder,
Yeah, that's a big motto with us. Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, same here.
So just to talk a little bit about what we mean by full circle content, we like to think of content as there's two forms. There's long form and short form. So long form is a podcast episode. It's a YouTube video or a longer video. And by long, I mean 10 minutes, maybe. It doesn't have to be hours and hours. So blog post, podcast episode, or video. And what you do there is if you listen to last week's episode, you go find a topic that your audience is asking. You find a question like, why is marketing important as a jumping off point? Or what does a marketing plan need to include? And you start with a topic you can talk about for about 10 minutes. And we try to encourage people to just do a video for a couple of reasons. It can be a lot more natural. You don't have to worry about a blank page. And it comes across way more conversational rather than sounding like it came out of a textbook. But if video is not your thing, you could record an audio or you could write a quick blog post. And then you take that piece and you chop it up. You take, let's say you covered 5 points in the main blog post or video. You do a social media caption and graphic for each of those points, but you also do a reel for each of those points and repurpose that caption. Maybe you do an audiogram with an excerpt from which is an audiogram is just a visual with an audio file over it. So you can take snippets of the audio from either the video or the podcast episode and pair it with the caption. And you can see like how many pieces you can get. Like if you have 5 points in one blog post and you do the stationary graphic, the reel, and the audiogram, suddenly you have 15 pieces of content from that one. And of course, those reels can go on Instagram, they can go on TikTok, they can go on YouTube Shorts. The stationary posts and the audiograms can go on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter. There's so many places that those pieces of content can go. So they even count as more pieces because you're getting on more platforms. And then from there, the real fun happens because then you start to break apart those pieces. So if you had one point, and you can break that down further, then you can use that as a jumping off point for a new long form piece of content. And then do the same thing over and over again. And so that's what we mean about full circle content. It's about picking an idea and then letting it, like breaking it out and then bringing it together for another piece and then breaking it down and really just letting your content do the work for you.
Yeah, I like that because you're taking this one larger piece of content that maybe it did take a little bit for you to figure out like, hey, what do I want to say? What do I want to talk about? But once you have that, it's not that you just put it out there once and then you have to come up with a brand new, like long form piece of content. So once you have that one piece of content and you can do all these different things with it, even though it does take work to put it out in all those, it's not like that mental work that it took to come up with that piece in the first place. So it's not like you're constantly having to churn out all of this, mental work. It's you get the main thing out there and you can do so many things with it. Like you were mentioning, if you have these 5 points, and even if it's something about marketing, maybe you're talking about marketing and you have like the top 5 ways to market whatever. And taking that first piece and going into more detail. So that could even start off another whole section of going into detail on that first piece.
Yeah.
We didn't even touch on how you can also spread it to your email. And you could even repurpose your email with that topic many times. It could be months down the way and you're like, hey, did you ever see this podcast episode where I also explored this, this, and this? It's just the opportunity of sharing and using it over and over and over again without feeling like you're having to create so much new content.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing, is taking, say, a video, stripping the audio and converting it into a podcast. Now you have 2 pieces of long form content, but you've only done the work once. Mm-hmm. And then taking the audio and dropping it in a transcription software. Our favorite is otter.ai. Plug the audio file in there and it'll transcribe it for you really well. And then you just have to take a few minutes to tweak it, make sure it reads like a blog post versus a transcription of a recording. But now you have a blog piece. And so again, you've taken one piece of content and you turned it into 3, and then you can continue to break those down further. And one of my pet peeves I see with so many people who have podcasts or video series or blogs, they'll post it and they'll never talk about it again. They'll never do a throwback to a previous episode or refer back to an older blog post. I mean, if the content hasn't expired, if it's no longer true, then you should be reminding people about it because you put that work into it and you did it because you thought it would be valuable. So share it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And that's one thing I love about just social media schedulers and how you can have some of that evergreen content. So yeah, I upload things into my social media scheduler. If it's evergreen content, if it's always going to be applicable, and it just recycles through. So maybe every 3 months or so, I have some of the same posts going out and I've gained new followers since then, or someone that didn't see it last time saw it this time and thought it was really cool. So I think it is such a waste when people create content, they share it once and then move on to something else. Because you're just creating extra work for yourself when you can reuse some of the same things because it's still really, really good 5 months from when you created it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people get the misconception of evergreen, thinking that it's not valuable in a way of sharing who you are and what your services are at that time. Evergreen is really great for the content of the type of problems or services you provide. You could share testimonials. Like testimonials are really great for evergreen content. And the more times you share evergreen, the more opportunity you have for growing that trust with your audience as well. You don't have to constantly be creating content that puts a date or an expiration on what you do or who you are. Especially when you're educating people about things, it's probably going to be the same. It's probably not going to change.
Yeah, in fact, I'd even take that a step further and say, like, for each pillar of your content, you can create evergreen. Like I'd say 80% of each pillar could be evergreen. The educational piece, you're regularly going to be reminding your clients like what it is you do and what they need, what their problem is, and what the solution is. That's not going to stop being true. Like if you service clients with social anxiety, you're always going to be talking about what social anxiety is and how to know if you have social anxiety and what you can do if you have social anxiety. That's always going to be true. And maybe some of the practices might change, but generally that information is not going to expire. And then with the who you are, well, your backstory is not going to change. Your values aren't likely to change. Your stories and who you are as a person isn't likely to change. So you can put the stories that are about you and your inspiration and who you work with, that can be evergreen too. And then the promotional stuff, depending on how often you change your service offerings or packages, that can also be evergreen. Even if it's like, if you have a lead magnet, you want to be reminding people to get your free resource regularly. minimum once a month, you should be posting about whatever free resource you have, although I would like it to be more often. But so that if you create a new like lead magnet or free resource, you can create, just sit down and create like 3 or 4 or 5 captions and graphics or pieces of content to promote that, and then put them in and shuffle them around and just have that going. And so once you've built a bank of evergreen content, which it's time investment, but once you've built that, then every new piece of content, if you just like create the long form and then chop it up, you just throw it in the mix and hit shuffle. And it's so much easier. You can have your content planned a year out, and not have to stress about it, because you've just maybe one day a month, you record a long piece and you do all the little captions and graphics and you pop it in there, and that's your marketing done, and you don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah, I love that. It's helped me to post more regularly because I'm not having to do it. So it is an upfront investment of your time, but I had a great time. I just set aside a whole weekend and just created a bunch of Instagram posts and graphics and wrote out some things. And every now and then, like every month or two, I'll sit down and maybe try to create like 5 or 6 more posts and upload it into that to be recycled through. And and now I don't really have to think about it. Sometimes I'll add some things that might be time sensitive and I post that on my own, but otherwise, that's posting for me 3 to 5 times a week. And I don't really have to think about it. I just go in and look at the comments and respond to people. And it's not much work at all.
Mm-hmm. We are huge supporters of working smarter, not harder. And a lot of it was like rooted because we have our families that we are trying to work around. And it was like, how do we make sure that we are connecting with our audience, but not, not killing ourselves trying to create this new content, as well as, still being available for our families. And Hannah and I remind ourselves or each other all the time, how can we do this easier and quicker? It's always like in the back of our minds of like, okay, this is the goal we want. How can we get there in an easier way?
And I think a lot of people think it is important to show up in your marketing consistently, to be consistent with your email newsletters going out, to be consistent with how many times you post on which platforms, because you want people to form habits around that, to have expectations like, oh, it's 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. I should expect a Showing Up solo episode to come out now. But consistency showing up consistently does not mean constantly. Mm-hmm. You can show up consistently, predictably, reliably, and create all of the content in one go, once a month or once a quarter or once every 6 months. And your audience, as far as they're concerned, you're working daily and showing up daily. But for you, all the work was done long ago, and you can just feel free to go in and respond to comments and messages and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I love that there's, we all have these motivators about working smarter and not harder and trying to find more or easier ways to do things, or more efficient ways to do things. And if you have a family, you've got kids that you want to spend time with, you may just want more space in your life. You might have some hobbies that you want to give some attention to. Like there's so many reasons why you don't want work to just take over everything. So being able to find some of these, and I've definitely been motivated by just wanting more space in my life and more free time, and getting really creative in how that happens. And even with, the podcast episodes, once I've connected with someone to be a guest, I'm like, hey, let's do 2 episodes. Like, since we've already went through the scheduling and we're already connected. So let's do that. And so that's something that just one little thing that makes it easier for me. And when I thought about starting the podcast, it's like, oh, okay, I think I want to do seasons so I can have little a few little breaks spread throughout the year. And that's just a few less episodes that I have to do every year for this, weekly content with the breaks. So, and even, like the social media scheduler that we've talked about. And even I talk a lot on the podcast here about like email autoresponders. So you can let people know expectations and things like that. So there's so many ways that we can utilize technology. And like you've mentioned about batching, just being able to, when you're really feeling it, cranking out a bunch of stuff, when you're in that space, and then you don't have to like pepper it through every day. So there's, a million ways that we can do some little hacks to make owning a business a lot easier.
Yeah, there's, we've had a lot of conversations with people, especially with therapists as well. You've been at your practice all day, you've been working with clients, and then you get home or you're still in your office and you have to create all this content. And there's nothing worse than that being at the end of a really long work day and feeling like you can't get the creative juices flowing. And it's just, it's hard. Everything is hard. And then you become more resentful of like your business and where you're at. So ways and tools that can make your business more efficient. So like you said, you have more space in your life to do hobbies or have time for yourself or whatever the inspiration is. People deserve to have that in their business and in their life.
And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. No one's looking for you to be like to come up with some novel, unique idea with your pieces of content. Because again, remember that you're not talking to fellow experts or colleagues. You're talking to your clients, the people who want to work with you, and your content should be of service to them.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Like what you put out there can be really, really simple. And I love the advice that y'all gave is, don't overthink it. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can just share a little bit about maybe how you interpret this thing or this term in your chosen field, or how how you apply it. And there's like a little unique spin that you can put on it if you allow yourself to show up in the way that you talk about what it is that you do. And sometimes it's just that your unique perspective or the spin that you put on it, and it makes it really click with someone when they may have heard the same thing from 10 other people, but the way that you say it really hits. So I think that's something that's important, is to not really censor yourself. And if you have a different take on something, don't be afraid to share that.
Well, and I also think that people need to remember that you're creating content for your audience. It's not for your colleagues. So you have to really like put your insecurities of what people might think about your content to the side, because that you're not creating content for your colleagues or the people that are in your industry. You're creating content for the people that you want to serve. And so it's about meeting them at their level, not at other people's.
Yeah, I think that's really important. When I first started my blog for my private practice website, it was, I did couples therapy, but my first blog post was like basically a welcome to my blog post, like an introductory thing. It really didn't have much of any substance to it. And I was so nervous about hitting publish on that. Like, oh, what if someone finds, something to say about this or something wrong with it? And I'm like, you didn't even say anything about, it's just like a welcome and talking about yourself a little bit and your background. And then when I moved on to putting more pieces of content where it's like, oh, I use this method of couples therapy and here are some relationship tips and tools. And in the back of my head, I'll be thinking like, oh, there are therapists that do like other types of models of therapy. And what if they don't agree with like what I'm saying because they do something different? And it's like, that doesn't matter. Like the clients were coming to me for the specific type of therapy that I done, and they loved the content and it was so helpful to them. So even when you know that what you're putting out there, it's like, yeah, this is legit. You can still have this, oh, what if someone disagrees with it or someone doesn't like it or someone has like a strong opinion about it, but you can't, let that stop you from sharing what it is that you have to offer that can help other people.
And really the only opinion that matters when it comes to content is the opinion of your dream client, whoever you're trying to talk to. If it's their opinion, whether they connect with it, whether they like it, whether they engage with it, that's the opinion that matters, not anyone else's.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. What are y'all thinking as far as, because I know there's so many ways to repurpose and expand on that. And I know, like you mentioned, a lot of people, they might, and especially therapists, they have a long day with clients. And then it's like, oh, the last thing I want to think of is creating content. Is there any advice that you have? Because I know it can range from like figuring out some way to get creative with your schedule where you can create some of those pieces of content, all the way to just hiring everything out completely. So how do you help therapists or any business owners that feel really busy? And it's like, I have some content, but how do I even go about repurposing it? Like, what are, just some of their different options and how they can get that out there and make sure that they're not, losing that old content and it just getting buried in the old internet.
I personally think the easiest thing to do, although it may not be the easiest mindset wise, but the easiest thing to do is to just record a quick video, 5 or 10 minutes. Just turn your camera on your phone and talk to it about something. One of the topics, like if you have the opportunity to research ahead of time topics that you can talk about, and then just pull one of those up and talk about it for 5 to 10 minutes. That piece of content, when you have time, can then be stripped for audio and turned into a podcast, or even just audio content. It could be, you could transcribe it and turn it into a blog post when you have more time. You can trim the video up and turn it into reels. And speaking of reels as well, I know people think you have to do like weird dances and stuff. And we actually find one of the most effective reels that we create that resonates with our audience is when we just do a 15-second tip. So we just, and you'd be amazed at how much you have to break things down. Like if you take away, imagine you're talking to someone who doesn't know anything, and then literally what piece of information can I give them in 15 seconds? And if you just give yourself 5 minutes, imagine how many 15-second clips you can record. Just record those and you have a bunch of reels. And then, yes, you'll want to write a caption, but with reels, especially with video content, people tend to watch the video, not read the caption. So you can quickly just write the gist of what you say and say, want to learn more, visit my website, or something like that. And then when you have time, you take the contents of that reel and instead you make a graphic, a stationary post with a more complicated, with a more in-depth caption. Or maybe you use that reel as a jumping off point for a longer video or a blog post or something. So if you don't, ideally, if you can set aside some time, like a couple days each quarter or even one day a month to batch content, wonderful. If you can't, if that's just not possible, 15 minutes or 20 minutes, do a long video and then do a couple 15-second ones. And you've got a bunch of content there as a jumping off point. And then as you find time, you can tweak it and repurpose it.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's great advice. And I love hearing that, those 15-second tips are some of the most popular, because that can probably relieve some pressure from people thinking like, oh, I don't know what to talk about for 10 minutes, or I'm really nervous about being on camera, but it's like, oh, I could do something for 15 seconds.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get stuck on trying to fill time, especially with 10 minutes can feel like a long time when you're being recorded, right? So yeah. 15 seconds gives the perfect amount of time to offer a simple tip that allows you to expand in many more other opportunities. So that just gives more content down the road instead of having to give, like Hannah said, make a reel. You don't have to write a very thorough caption, because you can write 4 more captions that explains that very thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can use that as your jumping off point. And another little tip, which Nicole and I, is the whole reason Showing Up Solo exists, is if you're nervous about showing up on camera or talking, filling the time, just invite a friend, record a Zoom call, or you can go live, but even just recording a Zoom call and have a conversation with a colleague who is also in the same industry as you, or has has the same ideal client as you, but a complementary service. Record that content, and now you both have a piece of content to use as a jumping off point.
I love that advice.
Yeah. And it sounds so much better because it's conversational.
Yeah,
it does.
It's so much easier to talk to someone else than to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if I'm being completely transparent to all the listeners out there, well, if you follow me, like I don't ever do any videos. Like I'm not like a video person, but my colleague Jane Carter, she invited me for like an Instagram live where we chatted about something like a specific topic, and I loved it. And it was so easy. So I think that advice of just doing something with a colleague, I'm like, I was a little bit nervous because I had never done an Instagram live before or anything like that. But within like 2 seconds of just being on there with someone that I know and talking about a topic that I felt good about, it was amazing. So I think that, that's definitely a great way to get your feet wet with doing that.
And here's a secret. You can go live without going live. There are services like StreamYard that you can record, and it's just like recording a Zoom call. And then what you can do is you can schedule it to go live ahead of time. So it's a pre-recorded video, so you don't have to feel nervous.
Oh, I love that. That is awesome.
You can go live without actually going live. And I actually would recommend going through something like that, because if you, for example, go live on Instagram, that video is on Instagram. You can't put it anywhere else. Whereas if you go through an app like StreamYard, or even just recording a Zoom call, you have the video file. So that can go onto LinkedIn. It can go onto Instagram. It can go onto YouTube. You can share, you can post it to your website. You can share it on Twitter. Like, the possibilities are endless. So live doesn't need to be scary. You can just pretend you're going live, but actually it's pre-recorded content.
Oh, I love that, because when I have thought about doing videos, I would definitely want to pre-record them, until I got used to being more on video. But thinking about, I'm just so new to the world of video. Like I haven't done any. So I think I have a few questions with that. So I have heard of StreamYard, and I've heard that it's a really wonderful service. And so it's like you record it in StreamYard, and where do you schedule it to go live? Is it through like that app that you're recording it, or do you go? So this may be a silly question, but just for our listeners that don't know a lot about video like me, just explaining how you can, like the technical parts of going live without actually going live.
So it's not a silly question. There's never any silly questions. I didn't know it till I used the app. So you can do one of two things. You can schedule a live and have it broadcast live, for example, inside a Facebook group or on LinkedIn. And all you do is you connect your social media accounts to the platform, and it'll broadcast them to whichever platforms you want. And so you can do it live, or you can just record it and not push it out to the platforms until you're ready. So you can record it and then schedule it to go live. Or you can just use it as a place to record it and download the file and post it wherever you want to.
Okay. Yeah. So like you would use StreamYard, and you would have your video, that it looks okay. And then you schedule it through StreamYard to go live on these other platforms.
Yes.
Perfect.
One cool little tidbit I'm going to add to it is, if you wanted to add like an entry audio to it, so it's like when Hannah and I do it, it has like our welcome audio. You can do that, which is really cool, because unless you like had some kind of video editing program, you usually can't do something like that.
Yeah, so you can pre-upload like an opening credits or an end credits, and you can have that play as you go live, so that when it first goes up, you don't have to have that panic, like, is it live moment. Instead, you've got this video playing in the background where you're just making sure you feel comfortable. And then by the time the credits are done, you look super polished and professional and ready to go.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, this is so interesting. And I'll definitely have to have y'all back on the podcast where maybe we can go into detail about just video, because I think that's so important and so powerful for people, and a great, like you said, that's kind of how you can create some of this stuff that you can repurpose. Like you do this longer video and then it can be repurposed in so many ways. So I think that's a really great thing. And it would be good, just to help people feel more comfortable in doing that, just so they know what it's all about and know a little bit more about the technology. Because sometimes it may not be the showing up on camera part. It may be like, I don't understand all this technology or how to make these things work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's technology can be such a barrier for a lot of people because they automatically, and I've done it myself, where you think that it's too complicated to learn or you don't have the time that you want to invest in learning. So getting little tips and tricks along the way goes like a long way in your business.
Actually, it's one of the reasons. So we have a lead magnet or a freebie called the Full Circle Content Guide. And on that, we actually list our favorite tools. So our favorite tool for making audiograms, we have StreamYard on there for going live and everything. And so we actually put those there because then you don't have to try to figure out what to use. You can just use ones that we're already using daily in our business.
Love that, because a lot of times when we're nervous about something, we can procrastinate in, I need to research and find the best platform for this. And we get stuck in reading the reviews or, and it's like, but being able to get to a guide like that, and it's like, okay, just use this. I know that Hannah Nicole used this and it works well. They've recommended it. So let me just go with this and get rid of that type of procrastination of just doing all the research and never taking action, which I'm guilty of.
Yeah. And you don't need to sign up for 5 free trials to try something. Like we've done that. So we figured out what ones we liked because nobody has time to do all those things.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on what we've been talking about the content and expanding on it?
My biggest tip is if your marketing is just feeling out of control and out of hand and taking up too much of your life, if you can find yourself, like, book off a week or something where you can just focus on building that evergreen content bank, and then moving forward, you just need to set aside like 1 or 2 days every quarter. It doesn't have to be monthly or even a couple or even a week every 6 months, but then set aside a couple days to mass produce new content that can just be mixed into the evergreen content bank so that you don't have to worry about creating daily. Instead, you can just show up on your social medias and be present and there to engage with your audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Why don't you share with people how they can find out more about you, follow you on social media, and work with you?
Well, we have a podcast, Showing Up Solo. So you can either listen or you can even watch us on YouTube. We also have Instagram, Showing Up Solo. Everything is Showing Up Solo. So, and then you can also access our free Full Circle guide through our Instagram and our LinkedIn. Am I missing anything, Hannah?
No, you can get our guide to free Full Circle content in pretty much all of our bios on our various social media platforms, or head to showingupsolo.com. And there's a link on there to grab that free resource, which I lovingly crafted to make everyone's life easier. So I really hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to come here today and talk to the audience about, all things showing up online.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for joining me today. For episode 80, I'm going to talk about why you need an intuitive business coach. And if you haven't yet listened to episode 78, I urge you to do that. In that episode, I began my conversation with Hannah and Nicole about how to come up with marketing content. I'm truly grateful that you choose to join me here for practical, nature-based, magical support for your business and life. For more inspiration and to see what I'm up to, join me over on Instagram at Mountain Practice Journeys. If you're enjoying yourself here, please head over to Apple Podcast and hit those 5 stars, and I'll be over the moon. And if you'd like to work with me, join me in Forest Mind, my cozy, small group mastermind for private practice introverts, highly sensitive therapists, and solopreneurs who help and heal. May the forest be with you.